Good afternoon, and welcome to another one of our Advice for the Current Times webinars. I hope you're well. I hope you're managing to stay cool if you can. I hope you got your feet in a bowl of cold water. If you haven't yet, you will soon. I haven't, I have to say. But I hope that you have a good evening after this one. We won't keep you too long, but you know that these are well worth attending. That's why you attend, and thank you so much for your company. As you know, we always like to make these a discussion, and we welcome your questions and your comments in the chat. So please feel free to join in the chat stream as you always do, and pose some questions whenever you like. We're going to keep our eye on that all the way through. We like to welcome your thoughts, as we go along. It's much better as an inclusive sort of discussion. We're all fellow teachers and head teachers here, so we know what we're talking about. But nevertheless, it's nice just occasionally just to spend a bit of time listening to our brilliant speaker, who we all know and love, Guy Dudley. So I'm going to introduce him now. I hope he's able to jump on.
Hi, Andrew.
Guy has been on the telephone to school leaders. Hello, Guy, to school leaders and deputy heads for many years. Spoken. How many school leaders do you think you've spoken to on the back phone in your career? How many?
Probably in 10 years, something in the region of, I would say somewhere in the region of 30,000. Yeah, 3,000 a year.
Wow, that's amazing.
10 a day. That's
amazing, isn't it? And we really appreciate it, because I know your mantra is always one of your many is to help us stay in control, really, which is so important.
Absolutely.
And when we lose that sense of control, which, let's face it, in the last 2 or 3 years, control and certainty have been in short supply, and you give us that. So thank you for joining us again today. So we're going to have it's advice for the current times. We're always going to try and talk about, we hope, what's on your mind at the moment, both in terms of schooling and reaching the end of term, but also looking ahead to the holidays. But Guy, why don't you talk us through the agenda, if that's okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, welcome everybody, and hopefully this will be a quite a fun sort of session. We did this last year, Andrew and I, and it was then. So we're going to start off with a quiz, and we call it interactive because you'll be able to provide your answers anonymously by the power of electronic poll wizardry. And in fact, that's supported by our colleague Bobby, actually. It's nothing to do with Andrew or I.
Bobby, no, we can't give any credit for that.
But the reason there is some method behind the madness of a quiz. Not only is it to test your knowledge on things that school leaders should know, but these are 10 questions that are commonly asked on our NAHT advice line. And they're also, unsurprisingly, areas that are covered in the Pathway Hub, Advice Hub. And we'll be taking periodic dips into that, courtesy of Andrew, as we go through the quiz. So not only are they common questions that test your knowledge, but they'll also be supported by a quick glimpse into the product itself of Pathway. So if you are a member, this will, or a user, subscriber, it will remind you that the Advice Hub is there, and where these advice articles can be found. And if you're new to Pathway, it will give you a tempting glimpse into what your school and you could have as a school leader. And I've written them all, so any complaints on a postcard to me about the advice pieces, but there's plenty there, and we'll be dipping into them at least 3 occasions while we go through the quiz. Right. And then we end on what I'd call what we've called a sort of summer bucket list. I've worked alongside head teachers now for 10 years, and I know one of their common frailties is that they forget to look after themselves sometimes. In fact, I would go as far to say is they fail to look after themselves a lot of the time because they're looking after other people. And often they use the summer holiday as a recovery period. But we thought it would be quite good fun to have a look at some of the things that you might want to think about doing over the summer, might not have thought about doing. We thought it would be just quite nice just to sort of, if you like, use it as a menu of things which you might want to choose to do over the summer holiday, I understand all this will be going out to members after the webinar, and it's all unrecorded as well. So I don't need to take notes, but we've come up with some fun ideas for you to do over the summer.
Absolutely. And on that point, actually, we've already had a question in from Peter. Levels of high levels of work-related stress. We really feel that for you, Peter, because I have to say I'm in a very similar situation. This year in headship has been challenging, as it has for many people on the call. I think staff absence has been, nobody chooses to be poorly, but it's been really difficult. So, and I know Guy will have lots of things to say about how we can help you bust your stress levels. And the summer bucket list, I think, really is really addressing that, isn't it? I hope. But,
it will go a long way too.
Thank you for sharing that, Peter. And we are absolutely with you on that. I really am. We all are. So I hope this will be useful for you. So thanks for asking that. And I'm sure many of us are feeling the same. So let's crack on then, shall we, guys? Is that okay? Do you want to talk to us about the first question in this quiz?
So the first question, I'm sure not one listener on the call has not had a complaint this year. So the question is, who can make a complaint to a school? And I think we're going to give you about 10 to 15 seconds to make your choice. These are all multiple choice questions. So the answer, and there's no tricks. The answer is one of those three, as it is on all the remaining questions. So who can make a complaint to a school? And gosh, these are time-consuming matters, aren't they?
They certainly
and
are. They certainly are.
Boy, well, everyone goes to the top of the class. Anyone. I'm just going to give you a sentence of narrative, and then in a short while we'll go to the relevant part of pathway. Yes, you're absolutely right. Everybody, it was 100% correct there. Anyone can make a complaint to the school, any member of the public, that is, as well as parents and carers and even pupils. Some schools have pupil complaints procedures. But one thing just to recognise that they can only complain to the school on the provision of facilities that the school provides. Mm. So, for example, if it's an admissions, a complaint about admission, to a school, you can't make the complaint to the school because the school isn't the admissions authority. In almost every single case across the country, the admissions authority would be the local authority. So it's an example of where a complaint can't be made to a school. But in all other cases, anyone can complain to a school, and I'm sure by the 100% record, most people have had that, been on the wrong end of that complaint over the last 12 months.
Anyone can, and many do.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So on to question 2. Is it a requirement for a school to have a lockdown procedure? Now, by this, I don't mean a COVID-19 lockdown procedure, because that would apply nationally or regionally or locally through the Public Health England or the equivalent in Wales and Northern Ireland. This is if in the event of any threat or perceived threat to a school. We've had cases of chemical plants where there's been a leakage of gas, could be a local intruder on the premises or nearby. So it's that sort of risk that we're talking about. So is it a requirement for a school to have a lockdown procedure?
What do we think?
Oh, interesting. Okay, so 86% yes, 14 no. Currently, and of course this could all change, but there is no statutory requirement across the country for a school to have a lockdown procedure. Naturally, NAHT would advise you to have one. And we've even written one for you in our model policies. And we've given a few examples of where that may be invoked in circumstances that provoke it, rather. But currently, there's no statutory requirement, but highly advisable.
Great.
Question 3. What are the required grounds for whistleblowing? And whistleblowing is effectively blowing the whistle. It doesn't have to be against any particular person. It could be a group of people. If there is a belief that that person is doing something wrong and seriously wrong, that's likely to bring the school into disrepute or break the law. And there are more and more cases that are happening, not necessarily in schools, but I think there are some there was a huge one recently, wasn't there, in the GCHQ, a couple of documentaries on it. And I think the World Health Organization have had, the United Nations rather, have had serious whistleblowing complaints made against them recently. So those are the 3 choices.
So,
And we have a mixed bag again.
Yeah.
Well, there were a number of high-profile cases back in 2013, and qualifying disclosures, i.e. when people whistleblow, no longer need to be in good faith, because it was felt that there was too much of a subjective judgment on behalf of the whistleblower if it was made in good faith. But it has to be in the public interest. So it used to be both. It used to be in good faith and in the public interest. But for the last 9 years, since the 25th of June, and this again is all in the Pathway product, it only has to be in the public interest.
Right.
And the most common in schools is a misappropriation of funds. Or a breach of a conflict of interest, where someone's awarding a contract to a mate or a partner, which is quite common. So, Andrew, I don't know whether it's a good point to just dip into the actual product Pathway.
Perfect. Let's do it. Let's have a look at some of the pieces that cover the items that you've just been talking about. Yeah. So I've forgotten which section we're going into now.
Statutes, policies.
Of course it is, yeah. There we go. Right. And we're fishing for, well, there's one complaints procedure there. Do you want to showcase that one, or?
Yeah, that's a pretty good, as good as any. So all of these questions that we've just posed have wider advice pieces. This is our national, the NHT's model complaints procedure, which has been endorsed actually by the DFE. The DFE liked it an awful lot. Now it's 15 pages long, but don't be put off by that, because it covers every eventuality in the event that a complaint is made against the school. And it also gives you a series of exceptions there that we touched upon in one of the questions.
Absolutely.
And what a lot of people do, Andrew, so I've heard, is they go on and they look at these documents and then compare them to their own school's policies, with a view to closing the gap where their own policies may have a deficit or two in those areas. So we've got a model complaints procedure, our NAHT model complaints procedure. If you're working in an academy, we have a model complaints procedure in a single academy. And we also have a model complaints procedure if you're in a MAT as well. So we've covered every eventuality. If you're in a sort of an independent school or a PRU or an alternative provision school, you can again use our model complaints policy and draw the parts from that that you want to. There aren't significant differences, but there are differences nonetheless, which is why we've included all three. And as you can see, they're all there, along with lots of others. There's the whistleblowing one as well. So we can back ourselves quite securely in the fact that we've got a piece. Again, we've got a procedure for you as well. And I think right at the end of that document, Andrew, there's a very helpful piece on who to contact in the event that you do uncover some wrongdoing. There it is. And it can be from anything from the HMRC to the police, to the local authority, and so on. So it's a very comprehensive piece. And often these pieces help to demystify some of those areas that appear to be quite complex, but actually aren't. Once you've got past the title of them, they're actually pretty straightforward.
Brilliant. So these pieces are within one of 12 categories, as you know, obviously, because you've written these. Advice Hub, which of course is one section within the Pathway programme under reflection. It's a really important section, and these are the different categories. And we're going to come on to a couple more categories as the quiz progresses, aren't we? As you might expect, the human resources section is huge. There's an awful lot in there, actually, and we're going to come on to that, actually. But that's one of the sections, and that's where statutes, regs, and policies is located. Brilliant. So onwards with the quiz, unless there's anything else you want to share, Guy?
No, I think that's it for now. I know everyone's desperate to get back to the quiz. So am I. And it's a thorny one.
There's Bobby. Here we go.
So can a parent ban an abusive parent or carer unconditionally? Head teachers have always got the ability to ban, but they need to tread carefully on this one.
It depends. Yeah.
And I suspect,
That would be my choice for most of these. It depends. My safest answer, I think.
Well, I would imagine that's the most popular. No, it's not. It's drawn. So yeah, there's obviously a mixed bag of knowledge here. The decision to ban a parent or a carer, if it's immediate, and you can ban a parent immediately, it should be provisional,
right?
Until they've been allowed to make formal representations. Because if their behaviour is so unacceptable that you cannot tolerate them being on the premises anymore, you can ban them immediately, but it has to be, they have to know that the ban is provisional and that it's subject to their representations or appeal or anything that they want to put forward. Once they've appealed, once they've come forward, and you'd invite them to do that as the school, their ban can either be confirmed or removed. So you can do that. Alternatively, you can serve them with notice that you're going to do it if the behaviour hasn't been so bad, and invite them to make representation, then confirm it at a later date. But if the behaviour is so bad, you can ban them immediately, but it's got to be provisional based upon their ability to make representation.
Right, right.
And we've got a really good piece of advice.
Yeah, we have.
On our website that I and the legal team at the NAHT have worked on, because it covers, and it's under working with others, because obviously the others are the parents and the carers and potentially others as well. And it's called, rather unsurprisingly, dealing with abusive visitors. And a lot of schools can have them, certainly at times of day, certain times of year rather, certainly when alcohol is provided on a school occasion. So what we've done is we've set out the position on dealing with abusive visitors, and the second half of that document deals with all the remedies, most of which are legal remedies that a head teacher or school leader can take in banning a parent either permanently or by some time limited arrangement. It's a very tricky area, but of course a head teacher must have the ability to ban a parent if their behaviour is unacceptable in a school setting. And I'm sure that some of the listeners and viewers will have had the misfortune of having to deal with these people.
Yeah, I've done it once.
And it's the section 547 of the Education Act that allows, there it is, that allows that to happen. So it's a statutory entitlement for a school leader to ban. But of course you can ban them altogether, subject to their ability to make representations. And the rest of that document deals with all the legal remedies, and there are an awful lot of them. So please don't. And there's a case there, just dwelling on that, where a school did ban someone, a mother. Obviously, it's been anonymized, but they didn't give her the right to appeal or to make any representations. And that's where a lot of this narrative has come from that particular case in 2000.
Okay, yeah.
Lots to dwell on. It's a fairly long
Yes,
document, but it's a fairly difficult, thorny issue.
Important one, yeah. Brilliant.
Right. On to question 5.
On to human resources.
On to human, where no doubt most of the viewers and listeners will know that a lot of this will come from. So, is a single and isolated incident enough for a member of staff to complain of being bullied, harassed, or victimized?
Gosh, yeah.
And there are legal definitions of those 3 words that are very helpfully set out by ACAS in single sentences. They're quite long single sentences.
What's that third option then, Guy? Because we've only got partial sentence there. There needs to be a series of related and attributable something.
Incidents of bullying or harassment or victimization, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
So
split again.
Yeah,
Majority but yes.
The majority wins because yes, a single incident is enough to invoke a procedure if you know that's the route that the victim or the complainant wishes to make. It can be any of those. It can be a single or a continuous. Some people make them after a series of incidents have taken place, but can actually attribute the behaviour back to, you know, sometimes many months and many years. But a single act is enough to invoke a procedure if the person wishes to go down that road. And I think for any of us that come up against bullies, they need to be dealt with quickly. So that's why it's a single act. And we'll look into that in a moment when we delve into the HR.
Yeah.
The next question has become quite a common one since people have come back from long periods of absence, generally COVID related.
Yeah.
So, what is the minimum period of continuous service a member of staff must have completed before they are permitted to make a statutory request for flexible working? These are quite common, in fact, requests of this nature after any period of absence, for whatever circumstances, really. But we've had a lot since COVID, as you might imagine. So,
most 26 weeks.
Yeah, fairly split, isn't it?
Yeah.
This was a little bit tricky, this one, because the question was asking about a statutory request. And the answer is 26 weeks. So anyone can make a request for flexible working at any time, with or without 26 weeks. I mean, I could come to your school, Andrew, and in week 2 ask for flexible working. That wouldn't be a statutory request. That would just be a request. The statutory request gives both parties protection under the law, and therefore it has to. I would have to serve 26 weeks at your school in order to make that request.
And at which point, Guy, we are obviously legally obliged. I'm, as a head, obliged to consider that request, both obviously in the interests of the staff concerned and the school and the children. But I'm not obliged to grant that request in its entirety, am I?
No, absolutely. I mean, the answer is always to flexible working is either yes, agree to it, no, don't agree to it, or ask the person to go away and modify their request so that you can agree to it with a few modifications. You know, some people, some head teachers have approached me and said, Jane or John wants to work Monday, Thursday afternoon and Friday morning. Well, you know, frankly, that's just not going to wash with a school timetable. If Jane and John want to split the week, and one does Monday to Wednesday lunchtime, and the other one does Wednesday lunchtime to Friday, that's something you could probably live with quite comfortably.
What I've noticed, guys, that in the last year or so is that teachers, and I entirely sympathise with this. It sounds like I don't, but I do. But as a leader, it's a difficult one to deal with, which is that I think some colleagues perhaps sometimes now have spouses, partners who, whilst they would have perhaps gone out to work, are now working from home. But of course, the teachers are not. But it just kind of influences them. Of course it does. And it kind of almost changes their perception. I've often said, in some respects, work is an activity, not a place. But if you're a teacher and the kids are in school waiting for you, it's a place. And I've had a few difficult conversations about that. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. But there's nothing to stop someone agreeing to a flexible working request within the 26 weeks.
Yeah.
Before that 26 weeks has been served.
Right.
But it wouldn't be a statutory request. It would just be a request.
Yeah.
And I would imagine the head teacher that agrees to that might be erring on the side of naivety. Right. Often some of these things are best, if you're going to hire somebody, make your position clear on flexible working in the job advert so that you're not hit with a request early on in that person's career or tenure in that job.
Just so that I'm clear, I think I know the answer to this, but I just wanted to check with you guys. If somebody says, look, we proved during lockdown that, you know, this is not me, but let's pretend that the teacher is saying, we proved in lockdown that I can teach the class remotely on a big screen, even if the children are in class and there's a teaching assistant there. So why can't I do that now? I'd rather they were in class.
I think you have to go, that's a really good question, but I think you'd almost have to go back to the ethos of the school.
Right, okay.
And say, you know, what are we here for? And you'd have to sort of perhaps take soundings from the governing body.
Right.
And potentially the staff itself. And I think ultimately it will become a matter of professional judgment on the head teacher's part once they've gathered all that sort of intelligence to say, no, you know, we've taken the view. And of course, you know, anyone who's facing a flexible working request can have a look at our flexible working model policy. And it's got 8 reasons there that are statutorily available to head teachers, all school leaders, all employers, as reasonable grounds on which you can decline a request for flexible working. And one of those is around, they call it customer service, but I would call it, you know, end user service, in which case, you know, pupils. Yeah. The language often used in these very, very commercial policies is quite commercial, but you have to sort of adapt it to your school setting. So I think I'd go back to the school ethos, governing body, and sort of say, what sort of type of school do we want this to be? If it's an occasional thing because of the person's personal circumstances, then I think it could be agreed to, but it would have to be by exception, but probably best to say no and close it down altogether.
So we've had a related question from Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. Are there any key areas that you have to be wary of when refusing flexible working requests? For example, unintended discrimination. You wouldn't want to lead to a claim for that.
No, and I guess, thanks, Kevin. I mean, I guess no area of school activity wants to, nor a school leader wants to open them up to discrimination, which is why any flexible working request needs to be put in writing by the applicant, and the school then needs a reasonable amount of time to consider it. And of course, what the school leader can do is refer and confer with their human resources provider, because there may have been other instances in other schools within a NAHT across the authority where a precedent already exists that has proven to be non-discriminatory. So the idea is to use those 8 answers, or choose from that menu of 8 answers, but to take some advice from HR, because as the school leader, you want to know what other intelligence is out there in the market of other local authority schools or other trust schools in an academy, where you want to take consistent decisions that are equally non-discriminatory.
Absolutely. Okay, shall we do we look at question 7? Is that all right?
Question 7.
Here it comes.
Should the notes of a staff grievance raised and settled informally be kept on file? So grievance is just a complaint, no more. And they can be raised informally or formally. But the question is, should it be kept on file? So let's have a look at the responses. Yes, no. Delighted that 67% have provided the right answer. Right. So a grievance policy, and we've got a model grievance policy, as you would expect, whether you're in a maintained school or an academy. Raising an informal grievance is still within the scope of the policy.
Right.
So though it won't go through a huge procedure with a hearing and a chair and an appeal panel, there will be a meeting between the school leader and the complainant. And at that school meeting, some notes will be taken about the nature of the complaint, what the resolution was, and that should be kept on the person's file because it is within scope of the policy. And also, as the school leader, you may want to refer back to it 6-12 months down the line when the same complaint comes up, and you can say, no, if you remember, we talked about this last year and what we agreed was, so what's the difference now? And you know, so it's there to create an auditable trail within the scope of the policy.
Yeah, understood.
Nice and easy.
Great.
The danger, I'd just say on that one, Andrew, very quickly, the danger of not recording it is that people say, well, I raised this complaint last year and you did nothing about it. And all it has to be is a file note. It doesn't have to be, it can just be a copy of an email. It doesn't have to be more than that at all.
Of course.
Big question this time of year especially. How do I deal with an employee's appraisal if they're on maternity leave? It's not just maternity leave, it's actually any type of leave, but this is the question we get asked the most, especially when a woman may begin their maternity leave around September time. Congratulations, folks, 100% correct. I'm sure no one would have said yes to answer A or B. But yeah, it's however light the evidence is, whether it's in the previous year or within the year, always go with the evidence because you're unlikely to face any challenge if you go with that. It's as simple as that. It's no more complicated. Some people who go on maternity leave have their appraisal before they go on maternity leave because they've served quite a chunk of the year. And if it's appropriate, they could have it before they go. Others might have it on one of their kit days, their keeping in touch days. Others might have it by telephone, by agreed arrangement. But the important thing is to do it on the evidence that is available, however light that is.
And presumably, Guy, the same does not apply to if they were on an informal or formal review at the point and were still going through that at the point when they went off maternity. That presumably is paused until they're returning from maternity.
Absolutely, yeah. If anyone is in a procedure,
yeah,
whether it's disciplinary, grievance, performance management,
yeah,
that's effectively frozen until that person returns to the workplace.
okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Well done, everyone, on that one. Two more.
Yep, number 9.
Can I recruit someone to replace another who has been made redundant? Quite an interesting one, this one. And of course, a redundancy is a legal term, which means that it's not about necessarily the person, it's about we don't need that type of work done here in this workplace anymore. Or we don't need as much of that work done.
Yeah.
And therefore, we're going to make a few of you redundant, but not all of you. So, yeah, it's quite promising. I mean, the answer is there is no period after a redundancy process that you have to wait before you re-recruit to that role.
Is there not?
In law, there's no period at all. However, if you do, you're likely to be challenged by the person who's been made redundant.
If you just you don't need that role.
And they're likely to win the argument.
Yeah, right, okay. So surprised. Yeah.
So the reason why I've sort of said put one of the options is yes after a term is that a minimum of 3 months is recommended in any event, not because it fits in nicely with roughly what a term is, 3 months-ish. It's because in employment law, if you dismiss someone, and this goes for any reason that you dismiss somebody, they have an entitlement, a legal entitlement to challenge that through the courts, through what's called an employment tribunal court. But they have to make the application to do so within 3 months.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
And it's, when I say within 3 months, I mean very precisely, it's 3 months less a day. So today is the 13th of July. If someone were to say, well, that's fine, I believe you're making me redundant, I don't think it's fair, but never mind, I'm going to make an ET claim on the 13th of October, they'd be out of time. It has to be 3 months less a day, because the 13th of October would actually be 3 months plus a day, because you've already included the 13th of July. So you can't include 2 13ths.
Yeah.
You're with me?
Yep.
So what we do say is wait for 3 months, minimum period of 3 months, make a diary note, and then it should be safe thereafter. Absolutely. Which just so happens to fit in with roughly a term.
Roughly a term.
Approximately.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. So
and the last one. The menopause, hugely popular area of interest and debate amongst NAHT membership. In fact, I was asked to write a paper on it by the National Executive a few years ago, and I did. And it's on our advice hub, and so is a model policy.
Yes, yeah, we'll have
So women experiencing the impact and effects of menopause protected at work. Let's have a look. Yeah, the majority have it right. The answer is yes, but it is a little bit conditional. I mean, if we look at those menopause itself, Andrew, you're talking about women of a particular age and what impact it has on them. Now, you could get into, a school leader could easily get into the realms of discrimination on all three of those. But if we look at disability, where the impact of menopause can be very acute, and you know, some women can end up being hospitalized and only for short periods generally. But if menopause passes the legal test of disability, which means that it's substantial, and by that I mean it's more than minor or trivial, and these are legal judgments. Long term, so is it going to last 12 months or longer, or is it likely to last 12 months? So the judgment could be taken before 12 months. And does it impact on a woman's ability to carry out day-to-day activities? And those are actually defined in law. So the ability to concentrate, write, read, type, speak. So when I say conditionally, if a woman's menopause symptoms meet some of those thresholds, those legal thresholds, yes, they are protected at work. Of course, any reasonable human being would say, of course, any reasonable head teacher would take reasonable steps to protect all women going through the menopause, should they need some level of support. But this question is about, are they protected at work? And yes, they can be if they meet these thresholds. And of course, a woman won't know that until they're nearer those thresholds than they are at the beginning of the menopause.
Shall we have a quick look at the model policy on this guy? Or not?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Absolutely.
Quick, just whiz over to that because it's a really good piece. Really good piece. I did check this morning that it's on there. There's a piece on the menopause there. I don't know whether that's the model policy though.
No, there should be.
There we are.
Have you got it?
Yeah.
Great. So we've actually done all the work for you and written a model policy for you. So, you know, it's a 7-page document. You can make the changes highlighted in yellow there that you can see in front of you. And you can effectively download that, put your school details in.
Yeah.
Make sure it's sort of fit for purpose, which it will be, but fit for your school setting. And there are the legal thresholds I talked about. And off you go. You'll have a menopause policy.
Yeah.
Simple, straightforward, effective.
And of course, as I found recently, and I'm sorry to admit this in front of everybody because I'm sure everybody else knew this years ago, but if you download this and save it as a PDF, and then open up your Word, and then go looking for it, opening it in Word, it converts it for you immediately.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I've been looking for all sorts of different apps where you can convert a PDF into Word, but it actually does it for you anyway if you're in Word at the time. Anyway, but it means it's editable then, which is great. So this is a brilliant thing for us to be able to access, Guy.
Absolutely. And of course, you know, when I did a little bit of research about NAHT membership profiles, the majority of our members are female, are in that sort of age group where they are likely to be affected by the menopause. And, you know, suddenly it became a very appealing piece to read. And of course, it's just as interesting for men because they need to understand what their colleagues are going through, whether they're reporting to them or whether they're being managed, you know, they're managing them. So this isn't a subject that is sort of gender specific. No. I think this should be something that should be read right through to the governing body and implemented. I can't see any reason not to implement it anywhere.
Absolutely. And entirely in sync with our school's values, really, isn't it? Mutual respect and understanding and so forth. So it aligns to that, really.
Absolutely.
Shall we have a look at the second part of this? unless there's anything else you wanted to say on that, Guy, second part of this presentation where we're going to share some thoughts on how we can look after ourselves in the months ahead. Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got 15 minutes left, but
Yeah.
bear with us, folks.
You've got a bucket list.
Yeah, the reason I wanted to include this was that we did it last year and it proved to be quite popular. And I think sometimes there's a huge pressure on us, isn't there, that you get to the end of a school year, you're all pretty exhausted, dealing with, getting back to normal and, having staff absences, trying to achieve more with less, white papers round the corner, who's going to be the education secretary by sort of Tuesday next week. Sometimes it's just nice if someone just presents you with a menu and say, oh yeah, I'd love to do all of those, or I'd like to do some of them. And I never thought of doing that, but I will. I'm going to give it a go. So this was our bucket list that we put together. And I'm not going to read it all out. But I do think some of this is, and going back to, I believe it was somebody called Peter at the beginning of the call. And we do have, Peter, a very good guide to your well-being on our Pathway Hub. It's called School Leaders, A Guide to Your Well-being. And some of these were touched on in that piece. But I think it's lovely to make a summer playlist. If you've got the technical know-how, and if you don't, ask someone who does, children or neighbours, generally anyone younger than me and Andrew. It's always helpful to keep a daily journal. I always think that's a really good idea. I'm not going to read out every single one of those, but never too late to take up cooking and drinking responsibly. Again, on that same theme, and these slides start off when you're at home. Again, one of those things, I'm gradually in my 50s reconnecting with my garden.
Yeah,
not just connecting with it, actually. I'm not reconnecting. I've never really connected with it. But for the first time in my life, and I guess it's an age thing, I'm reconnecting with it.
I've really got into houseplants, actually, and it helped because as a school leader, maybe other people on the school are the same. I'm hugely motivated by growth. I like things to grow. I like to see pupil numbers growing. I like to see the attainment and progress scores growing. And sometimes they don't grow as quickly as I'd like. So whenever I get frustrated about the lack of growth, I buy another plant and I watch it grow. It's terrific. I mean, you can't see here, but I'm surrounded. It's like a jungle in here.
Yeah.
And it's terrific. I really enjoy that. So anyway.
It's
there we are.
There's a couple here which are quite nice. I think the digital detox is good. Yeah. And the declutter and donate or sell unwanted goods. Again, these are lists. This is a list from you can draw from home. We've had to actually hire some storage space to declutter some of our house while we decorate it and then bring it back all in, because it's
back again.
but in the bringing it back, we will be forced to declutter some of it. I think that's quite a nice one.
My wife likes to hire a skip at very, very regular intervals. Actually, she really does frequently like to hire just a little skip. It's a wonder that I haven't ended up in it yet. But we have moved house many times and cleared the loft. Moved everything from the loft, moved into the new house, and put everything back in the loft again. And you think, well, anyway, there we are.
And it's amazing how doing these things gives you peace of mind. It really is.
I agree. Brilliant.
So
okay.
The next one is when you're at home again,
sleep more.
Sleep. It's the best recharger.
It is a charging pad, isn't it? Our bed.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have I'm sure everyone sleeps on a bed, but ask yourself, how old is this bed? Some people don't sleep very well because they just frankly have got very old beds. And investing in a good bed is really, I can't recommend it more highly. Because it'll ensure you'll sleep better.
Absolutely, yeah.
These are a little bit creative, but you can rent a hot tub. Our neighbours.
Can you rent them? I didn't know you could rent them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's one or two other things there that to do, again, reconnecting with nature. I think it's just such a wonderful thing. Ever thought of having a pond? That can be a great summer project, absolutely fantastic summer project. Be a tourist in your own town. How much do you know about the place that you live locally? Not as much as you probably think.
Not enough. Yeah, very true. I love farmers markets. Absolutely love farmers markets.
I'm lucky enough to live in a small town called Shoreham in West Sussex, where we have a farmers market once a month, and I come home heavier and poorer on each occasion. But then I've got a dog to walk, so I can generally walk it off with her. Visiting a vineyard. Now, I mean, I think we've all seen the local press recently that English wine has been granted unbelievable status of the equivalent of champagne. One of my colleagues, Joe, who lives in Selby in Yorkshire, brought us a bottle of wine made in Yorkshire.
Made in Yorkshire. Wow.
It was disgusting. Nevertheless, we can grow wine as north as Yorkshire, and I'm sure people who live north of Yorkshire will challenge me on that as well.
I'll stick with my Yorkshire tea, guy. Can't beat it. I've been to Denby's quite a few times in Dorking, and that's splendid wine. A little bit further south than Yorkshire, that's for sure, but that's splendid. Yeah.
But great day out, actually, a vineyard.
Yeah.
Really good. Whether you like wine or not, it's still a good day out.
Yeah. Live music events, which we're now having, of course.
Yeah.
Big difference.
I mean, it's I've never done zorbing or geocaching, but I've heard they're great fun. And I must admit, I've been to a golf range. I'm not a golfer, but I've been to a golf range, and it's not golf. It's just you hitting the balls into a big field, but it's actually quite good fun. And there's a few other little trips there if you live near water or feeling more adventurous. Especially boat trips this time of year. I think it's a lovely thing to do.
I was lucky enough to be invited to go kayaking not long ago, and I used to go kayaking all the time years and years ago when I was in scouts and venture scouts and all that stuff. I was a scout leader for a long time, and but I haven't done it for 25 years. And I went with a friend actually, and he'd got two, so I used one of his, and we went all the way. This is in Suffolk where I live, and gosh, you do see the river from a very, very different angle. You really do. You really do. It's terrific if you get the opportunity. Or that paddleboarding, as it's called, isn't it?
Yeah, and if you don't if it's too much for you, then go on a boat trip if you've got some water near you. I think this, again, this is a few for the adventurous, but taking a road trip. I love trains, only because before lockdown, I used to commute every day by the train, and I learned to love them. But I love steam trains. I love going on them. I'm not that interested in the train itself. I just love the process of the journey. It just takes me back to my childhood. I'm not that old, by the way, but it just takes me back to when there were more of them. And book an experience. That's if you're going to do it, now's probably the summer holidays, as good a time to do it as any. And if you look online, you'll find plenty of availability, a lot of which are very affordable as well. New skills. We've got a chocolatier near us, near where we live, and I've still resisted the temptation, but I may have to give in this summer and go down and learn how to make chocolate. It'd be cheaper, but learn a new skill.
I've started to learn the piano, actually, Guy. I play lots of musical instruments, have done all my life, but I've never ever learned the piano. So I bought that Simply Piano app on my iPad, and it gives a little reminder at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock every evening to do a little bit of practice. And it's so therapeutic, I must admit. It really is.
Yeah, it's well, that's what I've heard. It's, you know, for those that can play musical instruments, it takes you, you know, it's escapism, isn't it, from reality?
Just immerse yourself. Yeah.
So there's a couple of things there that are helpful. I know that Strictly Ballroom Dancing or Strictly Ballroom will get going shortly. Fishing, one of my colleagues absolutely swears by it.
Yeah.
I've never been, but it's something that I think, I'm probably in the wrong part of the country, but certainly in certain parts of the country, it's something that I would be very keen to do. And I think getting first aid trained, especially as a school leader, would be perhaps a good thing to do.
Yeah.
A few things there about self-care. I know this is a big passion of yours, Andrew.
I'm not very good at it, but I try and encourage others. This year, I've been absolutely dreadful.
But I think, you know, I think we all know that I've only ever been on, I think, 1 or 2 spa days in my life. I've had 1 massage in my life. And I don't frankly know why I haven't been back for more, because I thoroughly enjoyed them. I was exhausted afterwards because it just drains you of that energy. But you do feel much better for having done it. And I think there's one more. Is there one more? Yeah.
Review your finances.
I think this is not to be underestimated. Again, I've got a colleague, Kate, and Gail, a couple of colleagues, Gail, who spend a lot of time on the phone talking to members about their pension. And they didn't know what age they had to be to start drawing it down. They didn't know whether they could buy additional years. They'd had breaks in service, and therefore, you know, perhaps possibly to have children, or they just went away and came back into teaching later on in life. I think it's very calming and brings great peace of mind if you are able to review your finances, especially your pension, because many people on this call will be near a pensionable age than they were at leaving school. And the other thing, you know, I would really ask people to consider is giving themselves a bit of an MOT, whether it's a blood pressure check at the doctor's, as easy as buying a blood pressure machine from your local pharmacy. Very cheap, 19, 20 pounds. Keep the readings for a week. See how your blood pressure is, and that's often often the best indicator of stress. Book yourself an eye test. When was the last time you had an eye test? And it doesn't matter whether you wore glasses. No one wore glasses when they were born. And in fact, I was 20 before I realized I was as blind as a bat. I kept walking into things, and you know, you just don't know. You know, booking an eye test. People ring and say they have, you know, they have abdominal problems and headaches and migraines. You know, there's a little checklist I take them through. When did you last have an eye? Well, 5, 6, 10 years ago. And you think, well, no, you should really be having an eye test at least every 2 years.
That's right.
And your employer may well pay for it. Not having correct glasses is a big issue.
It is.
And it can get worse. And as I said, checking your own health could be as easy as buying a blood pressure machine from the local pharmacy for 20 quid and reassuring yourself that your blood pressure is within the normal ranges. It is the best. You can also buy these little things you clip onto your fingers that measure your blood oxygen.
That's right.
I mean, you know, for 20, 30 quid, you can buy a self-help kit at your local pharmacy. And those are two of the best indicators of good health. But you need to do it over a period of time, a week or two, which is why it's often best done over a holiday.
Right.
But please don't underestimate that. Is there one more, Andrew, or was that it?
Just this last one?
Yeah, I think a couple of things I'd do there is the middle bar. It really is okay to do nothing. If you just want to sit and stare into space with a glass of wine.
I'm craving that at the moment. Not actually doing, or not actually talking to anybody.
It really is okay to do it. And I would put a loose plan in place. And I emphasize the word loose.
Yeah.
Perhaps use this menu, share it with friends, family, see what they think. And I know you've got a favorite film, Andrew. We've all got a favorite film, haven't we? My favorite film is the film Marvelous. And if you haven't watched it, go and buy it on Netflix or CD or video or Blu-ray, whatever system you've got. It is the most funny, heartwarming film that will have you laughing and crying in equal measure, and it will warm your cockles.
Absolutely. I sat down and watched Christopher Robin, the Winnie the Pooh thing with Ewan McGregor last year, actually, in the holidays with my youngest daughter, and it was a salutary experience. It really was. My goodness gracious, some lessons there. Worth watching if you haven't seen it. Worth watching. Yeah.
For English teachers out there, I know Marvelous has got 2 L's. That's my mistake. Probably took the American spelling and I didn't spell check it, but there you go. Good. Well, I think, Andrew, that hopefully that's a helpful, provocative list.
Thank you.
For everyone on the webinar.
That was terrific, and a really enjoyable experience. I feel calmer than I did an hour ago.
Good.
And ready to try at least 2 or 3 of those things on your list, and I'll tell you how they go. Zorbing, I think I might leave for my kids, but I don't know. I might give it a go. Terrific. And thank you everybody for joining us today, and especially to Guy, of course, for all his brilliant contributions. We really do appreciate it. And thank you, Bobby, on the call, of course. She's put in some links to Discover Education's website, where you can find out more about Pathway, of course, which we'd encourage you to do. This is all the content that we've been talking about, obviously, is displayed on the Pathway course. But you also are going to share some information, as you always do at the end of this webinar, aren't you, Guy? Is that right? Going to drop a little piece, the answers?
Absolutely, yeah. I've got basically a crib sheet with all the questions and all the answers. Something you might even want to have as a staff meeting or with your SLT as well. So
I'm going to use that stuff. Yeah, brilliant. Well, you have a great summer, and I hope we see everybody again in September. I'm sure we'll do another one of these early in the autumn when we can look at what is in everybody's in tray. But for now, let's not think about that. Let's go outside.
Agree.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Guy.
Thank you
for joining.